Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues with Bonnie Violet
and Lulu.
Each week, we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Exactly. Our intention is to inspire better spaces for more conversation
by tackling topics used to separate us.
Before we do this, please like, comment, and share this episode. And also, most important, subscribe.
Subscribe, share.
Share, exactly.
Share. So, how was your week? How was your weekend?
Oh, I work all weekend, but the weekend was pretty good. I mean, honestly, if I don't cut anybody, if I don't lose my mind over nonsense, then I'm good. And so it was a good weekend.
Yeah, retail a little crazy right now. More and more people out.
You know what? Honestly, it's I think people are learning how to be in society again.
Right.
There seems, now that folks are getting vaccinated, more people are out. It felt like a regular kind of weekend at my current place of employment. I don't need to say the name.
Right.
And the only difference is everyone's wearing masks, but they were still climbing over each other. I'm all like it was Black Friday or something.
Right.
Really? Seriously?
Right.
How about you?
It was an okay weekend. I've been pretty busy for the most part, so I didn't do much this weekend, which was kind of nice just to stay in. But I've been doing a lot of editing this week for a video for Spring Fling.
So, nice. Yeah. Actually, for Spring Fling, actually, you should just tell people what Spring Fling is.
Is it? Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Spring Fling is it's a variety show that's going to be taking place this weekend on Saturday. So we'll put some information somewhere at some point. But just check out Living Sober.
It's this weekend
for it. Yeah, May 1st.
That's okay.
Right?
Well, I was supposed to send a video. I may have to do that after this.
Right.
Oops. Okay. So, were we going to listen to or read it? Yeah. No. Actually.
So we did. Yeah, we received a voicemail this week that was super, super cute, and we wanted to share that with you before we got too far into this episode.
Absolutely.
Hi, Bonnie and Lulu. This is Zachary D, aka Labeline. Pronouns they, them, and their. I just wanted to first off say I'm so grateful for both of you. You're both just amazing, fabulous, magical human beings. And I'm so excited that you have created and are hosting this amazing podcast for the recovery community and the world at large. I also was just really excited when I saw this week's guest, Fonda Cox, who is a mental health advocate and specifically around recovery and eating disorders. And they identify as non-binary, which I just relate with all of that. So I'm super excited to hear this week's episode, as someone who works in mental health, who's struggled with eating disorders over my life, both overeating and anorexia. And, it's kind of a lifelong battle to keep in check is something I've realized. So I'm really excited. And again, kudos to both of you. And thank you so much. And I look forward to this week. Love you.
Wow, love you too.
I love it. Zachary D. It's
yeah. And that way we don't have to introduce our guest because she did it for us. She talked really great about them.
Absolutely. So with no further ado.
We're yes. With our guest?
Well, we can. We were talking to our guest before about our personal experience with these issues, and I wanted to I figured that it would be appropriate for me to share. I know that when I got sober, because I was using crystal meth, I lost a ton of weight over a long period of time, and.
Right.
What generally happens when you start eating again is that it comes back. And so I gained the weight that I was supposed to have on my body. And unfortunately, I didn't gain the mental capacity to see that it was a necessary thing. So it's like, it was a struggle because all of a sudden it's like I had 20 extra pounds that I thought didn't belong there, and I felt disgusting. And I felt, it was one of those things that really could have railroaded my recovery, because I definitely knew how to get rid of it with a crystal meth.
Right.
And I think, thank God that I was in therapy at the time, and also working some sort of a program, that I was able to kind of rely on folks who knew that this was something, that it wasn't probably going to be a permanent or a forever thing, that if I worked through it, I could come to terms with who I was and what I looked like. Yeah. But it is something that we all deal with.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I can think about body stuff is I grew up really little and really small and really petite. And that was something that was really challenging for me, just to be so little as a boy in like Idaho. And I really had a self-conscious about that for a long time. But I feel like that's like my biggest body thing was when I was younger, I guess. So let's go ahead.
I just wanted to
Yes.
give a little short bio about Eric before we bring Eric Dorsa, aka Fonda Cox, in. So
Fonda Cox.
Eric Dorsa is a national LGBTQIA mental health and recovery advocate. They're the host of Queen and Sober, an Instagram live series with Eating Recovery Center and Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center. As an advocate for the LGBTQ community, Eric shares their experiences of eating disorder recovery, coming out as a gay and non-binary person, and their recovery from substance use disorder. You can find Eric on Instagram at FKDrag. And without further ado, let's welcome Fonda to the show.
Hi, Fonda.
Hi, Fonda.
Hi. I love that. I heard a siren. I don't know if that was intentional. Like, am I in trouble?
Luckily, you're in Chicago, so
I know we're all three of us are looking around like, uh-oh.
I'm that, that's that dreaded sound. But, as a sober person, well, two things. When I had my car and I would see police, I'm like, well, I'm not scared of you pulling me over for, there's no drugs in the car now. But that flash of like, oh God, it's like I can't forget that feeling of like, oh man, I got so much on me right now. Perks of being sober. Don't have to worry about drugs on the body.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely.
We had got a question last week from one of our listeners. And the question was, let me bring it up here. It was hoping for a discussion on body image, body dysmorphia, fat phobia, and recovery from Michael S. And so we thought you would be a really great person for that. That sound like you?
I'm honored. Yeah, it sounds like.
I think a great place possibly to start is like, what obviously you've had experience with, but what motivated you to become an advocate in the way that you have for it?
I mean, a lot of it has been just self-preservation. I was not able to hide ever as a queer Mexican Latin boy in drag, growing up in San Antonio, Texas. I internalized a lot of negative messages, and the effects of shame on children is just, it's debilitating. It's deadly. And so much of my journey in recovery has been literally fighting for my life against, like, fighting my brain so I can live. And also really looking at that, like, words are really powerful. So powerful that, and I think we're taught, we're gaslit by society to blame ourselves, like, oh, you're just sensitive, or, why did you take it that far? You're crazy for taking it that far. When really, if you really look at it, we live in a culture that is inundated with a message so powerful about body and body image that people are literally dying from it. Anorexia and bulimia are one of the most deadly mental disorders, next to substance use, opioid. And I would argue, and a lot of people would argue, that there's an eating disorder underneath drug use. And, 25 people die a day from the complications of an eating disorder in this country alone. So it is a problem. And I think we're all kind of coaxed into normalizing it and not talking about it. And so in the hopes of freeing myself from the bondage of that cultural mindset, that my body is a currency, that my body determines my worth and my value and my ability to show up in life, I realized that I had to give it away in order to keep it. And once upon a time, there was nobody that looked like me or sounded like me who was having that conversation. And the only other boy, which that's how they presented, that I knew ever going through, the 10 plus years of seeking eating disorder treatment, which was way too expensive for me to consistently afford. It's crazy. Died of complications from their eating disorder. And so I am committed to speaking out, and it gives my experience, selfishly meaning and value. But most importantly, it keeps, to quote Beyonce, when you've been given a lot, there's a lot that's expected of you. And I'm not here today because I'm lucky. I'm here today because some very beautiful and giving souls helped me when I had no ability to help myself. And so I don't take that lightly. And so if I can give voice to an experience, if I can do my part in letting other people know that you're not crazy, there is literally over $70 billion a year invested in making sure that you hate yourself and your body. I think, at least for me, there's a little bit more sanity in my life. So that's why I am such a strong believer in advocacy, because I think recovery really happens when we realize that we're not alone with the questions.
You had mentioned that you felt like eating disorders were a part of a lot of addiction and stuff. I'm sorry, I'm not saying exactly as great as you said it, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh yes, I do.
Yeah, a little bit more. Sorry.
It's interesting. There's, when it comes to LGBTQ plus mental health, I think we're really beginning to do the research, because before, a lot of research was centered around people who had the affluence and the privilege to access mental health spaces, because mental health is still not a right. It is unfortunately a privilege in this country. And so I think more as people realize gay is not a phase, it's not a grunge phase. It is real, and that there is a human being present there in that experience. I think we're beginning to learn more. I think the more and more we recognize and lessen the stigma around addiction and realize that addiction itself is genetic. There's a huge genetic component to just eating disorders and addiction alone. And they kind of go, they kind of hold hands. They're two different friends that like have bad ideas and like to talk to each other. That's how I tell people, my eating disorder is not just another face of my addiction. They just existed together. And they, genetics loads the water gun, squirt gun, and the environment pulls the trigger. My environment was very trigger happy. So there's a lot to be said about that. And so I think when you listen to the language and when you the more we step outside of this idea of like singleness of purpose, within the recovery rooms, and you listen and you really connect with people, there's a lot of shame, I think, especially for queer people, about how we exist in our bodies, because you can't talk about identity and not talk about a body. You can't talk about shame and not talk about how you occupied space as a queer person, from the way you move to the way you talk to the way you present yourself, how you dress. Like, I would argue, if you have a body, you have a lived experience in a culture that is just rampant with shame. Like, so there's a very fine line, I would argue, between eating disordered or, body dysmorphia and disordered eating or disordered body image. And I think, society has an eating disorder. I'm just going to throw that out there. Fight me. I think if we were to take all of the ideals that we hold as a culture, it would not get very far in the DSM. And I just, when I listen to the experiences and when I'm very open about my eating disorder, I get so many Me Too's. Like, I feel that way. I feel that way about like my body. I feel like my body determines my worth and my value, or I hold shame in my body, or I hold shame about my body. And I don't think that you have to have an eating disorder to recognize that human experience. Like, I feel like my eating disorder and my experience with disordered eating, and body image and body dysmorphia, has really helped me develop a lot of empathy and compassion, for myself and other people, and really kind of untangle the matrix around what our culture tells us is, acceptable and what we should be striving for. And I think when it comes to particularly the queer experience, I would argue, for a lot of us, before we ever for me, I'll keep it for myself, and again, I get a lot of Me Too's. Before I ever like knew what gay was or queer was, I felt so awkward in my body and how my body took up space as a queer person, and I was shamed in how my body moved and how I felt about my body or what I thought my body meant, and that really is what planted the seeds for an eating disorder.
I was thinking about it, with all the different layers of issues that a lot of us have. Was it did you always have an awareness around, well, obviously it had well, maybe not awareness around those struggles as far as eating disorder, or was it as a result of maybe finding recovery? Like, did one lead to the other? Was it a snowball effect?
Yeah, it's funny. I heard, and how do I say this? So no, yes, I did have an awareness growing up that I was painfully different. I would call it excruciatingly embarrassed all the time. I was very self-aware, not in a good way, because it was constantly pointed out to me, and teased and made fun of. And so, yes, there was an awareness that I was different. But in terms of like a healing awareness, that definitely came with recovery. So I entered eating disorder recovery first. By the time I was 18, I was still in the closet. And by that point, like I had gone in and out of what I call medical interventions. There was never any psychotherapy or anything like that for my eating disorder, mostly because a lot of treatment centers, again, privilege, not a right, just did not want to take on the liability of having an adolescent male. Because again, there's only research about females. There's only research about, that stereotype that only white college age girls who come from like some kind of perfectionistic background develop an eating disorder. There's so much research out there that is like, no, I mean, like statistically, particularly BIPOC women who experience food insecurity have the highest rates of bulimia. Asian women have high rates of anorexia. LGBTQ men which make up such a small portion of the actual male population in comparison, make up almost 50% of males with eating disorders. So like when you start to really look at those numbers, it's very, very fascinating how the stereotype is still white girls striving for a 4.0 in college. And so when I finally entered treatment, I was desperate to get better. So that gift of desperation was there. And I was willing to do whatever it took to not live in the pain of my disorder anymore. So I think the seeds that later helped me with my addiction were planted in my early recovery from an eating disorder. And then I came out of the closet because it was always about shame, really. I think underneath what I've learned from being in like recovery from substances is that shame was kind of this: I'm not enough. I am not enough. I'm not good enough, strong enough, smart enough, lovable enough, capable enough. That I'm not enough tape is what fueled me to seek something outside of myself to make me whole and make me worthy. And I would be lying if I didn't say that that wasn't still there. It's just, thank God, group of drunks, whatever, that I am not alone with that anymore, and I can collectively face that with other people and really not stay alone in the shame. But that's really what it was. And so, I got in eating disorder recovery, and there was still so much shame there, and addiction runs in my family. And so I went into what I knew, which was, I came out and there was all this shame, and nobody was talking about shame in the gay community, in the queer community. It was pride, 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 pride. And I'm so like, I love what gay pride means and what it represents and what it stands for. But nobody was talking about what the shame really was. And so I wanted so badly to finally feel a part of. I ran to what I knew, which was, the drugs and the alcohol and the bars and performing, and and I knew that I was running from something. I just wasn't ready to face it. And then I got sober because it happens. You wake up homeless and you have to look in the mirror, hopefully, and still had a car full of drag, but survival. And I found myself in a queer 12-step room, and I realized, oh my God, I'm dying from shame. And that's really what I think is at the core of it. And which is why I think we talk about the power of the group so much, because we need to connect with other people to realize that shame is an illusion. But when I'm left by myself, it just festers.
Yeah. So what is your solution for recovery now? Like, what does that look like for to be in recovery at this moment?
So many things. So I'm 6.5 years sober, and I'm learning that means absolutely nothing. The more I think I know, the less I know. For me, I think what recovery is, living in the gratitude of the group. Like, I'm really learning that nobody's perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us are little saints in the rooms. And that the more I can really accept flawed as by design, and really kind of just be enough. Like, I never felt enough, but now it's like, I am enough. We are enough. And really keep it basic, being honest.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, it's so hard, right? I think the first truth I told was, I'm a liar. Can't tell the truth. I don't know how to tell the truth. Like, ironically, right? But I didn't know what the truth was. I had been lying to myself my whole life. It's so hard, right? But like that grace, the 12 steps in the rooms really gave me that grace to like figure it out. I'm still figuring it out. But I think the most important thing is like, just show up. and you don't have to want it all the time. It's not about perfection. It's not about wanting it all the time. You know, just show up, even if you're struggling or you're using or whatever. Like, just show up and never apologize for needing to share something that is going to save your life. Like, it's just not worth it. What's the point of that secret if you're not here?
Yeah.
Are your programs, or I guess, is your eating recovery, like, is it integrated, or is there something that you do different in that area than you would do around drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I tried it all. I tried rooms dedicated to eating disorders, and it didn't work for me. I don't know why. I really couldn't tell you why. It just didn't work for me. It wasn't until I met um, you know, other people in, I always say this. I'm gonna say this. My eating disorder, I think, is a culmination of character defects, but it's not the same thing as my addiction, my primary addiction, if that makes sense. And so it is in there, absolutely in there. But I don't think it's the same thing as, like, you know, if I were to take a shot of something or a pill of something else. It's definitely related. I think there's still a lot to learn, which is why, like, kind of these abstinence only programs, when it comes to like behaviors and stuff, it just did not work for me. I'm not saying it doesn't work for other people. And when I finally got into the rooms, it was like, you know, AA has been my solution of choice. Like, it even says it in the book. Like, if I, you know, this has helped people with so many other problems, you know, like, it kind of unfolds, and it's really by putting that kind of in there, because it was such a big issue. Like, it was such a big issue for so long, and it still could be. It's taught me a lot about powerlessness, and it's taught me a lot about letting go. For so long, I was so scared of the eating disorder coming back that I was like policing every thought in my head, and I wasn't living my life, and I was avoiding joyful movement, and I was avoiding exercising, and I was avoiding, like, I was just shoving food in my mouth like medicine. I was like, I just have to eat it or I'm going to be sick again. There was no joy, there was no love. And it wasn't until I was like 4 years sober and I was sitting in a meeting, I just had this thought where God was like, you've never turned this over to me. You are still trying to control this, and you're not experiencing joy. And I like shared about it in a meeting. And then afterwards, other people came up to me and they're like, oh my God, me too. And that's the most powerful word you could hear, I think, in a recovery room. And I realized, just like surrendering has been such a huge part, like realizing that I am not bad or broken or flawed because I'm struggling with body image today or because I'm struggling with food today. It's by design. And that if I can just learn to love myself no matter what, it actually goes away. My favorite line in the big book is, when I focused on the problem, it got bigger. When I focused on the solution, the problem went away. And so when I suit up and I show up and I realize that I need a body to be of service, I need a body to do to love the people in my life and to voice that this is a vessel, it changes in that moment. And I've worked the steps on my disorder with other people in the rooms who have disordered eating, and it's just gotten better. And I've stopped caring if it goes away. You know, like, does the addiction ever really go away? Or am I just like doing what I know to do to live my life the best that I can? And so I think that's where it's kind of, the messaging is different, is, you know, I don't think, yes, I don't think, you know, an eating disorder ever really goes away, because it's been such a huge formative part of my life. You know, I've learned so much from it. I hope I never forget, you know, like, I hope I never forget. And at the same time, I feel like, you know, less and less does it control my life. And I think that's been the biggest way in which both my recoveries kind of go hand in hand. I couldn't have one without the other. I really couldn't. I don't think. But I don't think they're this. I don't think they come from the same place.
So earlier we were talking about this idea of like the conversation kind of changing. And I'm thinking back to um let me share something that I heard. I guess it was LeVar Burton was on The View, and they were talking about uh taking away the pronouns or whatever from potato head from that toy. And I'm gonna get to he said something that I thought was amazing. You know how you have the group of people complaining about cancel culture and this, and you're trying to take this away and that way. And he said it's not cancel culture, it's consequence culture, and it's because so many people who always felt other were not being represented or seeing, and to bring that to this conversation, changing the conversation. I mean, obviously that's what you're doing for young queer folk, for young LGBTQ is important, so that we kind of and changing the conversation about bodies and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I don't know. I mean, talk about like the kind of work you do with regards to that. If this made any sense at all, I tell you, I'm still learning.
No, it's interesting. Like, I'm the one who had the eating disorder, right? Like, I had heart failure by age 12 from anorexia. I was in and out of hospitals all throughout my adolescence getting tube fed, because they didn't know what to do with me. When I was 12, and I was in the hospital for heart failure, I was diagnosed with anorexia, and the insurance company came back and said, "This is the wrong diagnosis. Boys don't get eating disorders." So to go from that to where we are today, I think is a huge thing to celebrate. The fact that we are normalizing the conversation around what it means to have a body in this world, what it means to be a human being in this world, to be a marginalized identity, whether that's a woman or queer or black or Asian, trans, this idea that like all human beings deserve respect and autonomy. I mean, that's where we are today in terms of shifting a cultural narrative. We haven't arrived. It's still bloody and ugly. I mean, we have how many states introducing anti-trans legislation? And the fact that we're talking about it, I think for me, and I'll get controversial because I think we would miss an opportunity if we didn't look at how far we've come at the same time. Because the reality is, and I think for a lot of what is considered pop cancel culture right now, is there have been so many generations who had it way worse and fought even harder battles. Like, we can't give up. We can't give up, and we can't turn on each other. We need each other. And I think that's kind of where I'm at, is it's like, I can sit here and I can get angry and live in an echo chamber. I can look back at what those who paved the way for me went through and say, okay, I'm picking this up. We're going to keep walking forward. And that's where I hope we continue to stay. This idea that's like, don't ask questions. It's like, I love when people ask questions. I put myself out there as an advocate so people can ask questions, because how are people going to learn how to treat you if you don't teach people how to treat you? If someone comes to you and says, I'm curious, and you say, not my job, but then I need you to stop being who you are, like, how does that work? That does not make sense to me. So I have my own things that I'm working out in terms of like where we are culturally right now. I think we've really had to become aware of the reality. And I think there's a lot of people who are just realizing that trans people exist and non-binary people exist. And that's something to celebrate. And at the same time, it's also, it's a yes and we have so far to go, and we need as many people on our side as possible. I love what Ruth Bader Ginsburg says. She says, fight for what you believe in a way that other people want to join you. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to stay rooted in love. Like, we have to stay rooted in showing up for each other. And, I think, cancel culture can be harsh, but I also like that it's accountability culture. You can say or believe whatever you want, but you're going to don't know what to do with the bias that they're becoming aware of. They don't know what to do with the inaction that they've never had to deal with. And they're starting to see that how they've been living and thinking and being in the world has consequences for other people. And so, to be able to show up and to talk about your privilege, I think there's a lot to be said. And I think hopefully we'll find our way to start, instead of like being in our little camps, that we'll be able to start having like more conversations with each other and realize that we really are all on the same team. That's kind of what I'm seeing, if that makes sense. If that answers your question.
Yeah, but I was going to ask you because it's something that I deal with, like as a Black gay man. I have a lot of friends and people. I read like, how do you deal with folks that are frustrated? And like, I really appreciate when you say I want people to ask questions and I want to engage and have conversation. And there's an element for me where I feel like if I really want to be an advocate for change, if I want to move things forward, like or take the baton and keep going, that there is for me, I have a certain responsibility to be open to educate those who want the education. And how do you deal with or when you encounter folks that are in this struggle, that are with good reason just completely exhausted and no longer interested in meeting people halfway?
I mean, that's very real, and that's why we need each other. It's a relay. It's not a solo race. We really have to. We have to be willing to have it's acceptable to want to tap out. It's exhausting. You have the right to live your life. It's not. And so I think the most important thing is like self-care. You have to live your life and celebrate your life. You have a right to celebrate your life and to celebrate your life with people who have earned the privilege to stand in front of you. Brene Brown talks about it. Like, you don't just go around and share the most vulnerable parts of yourself and like, I am vulnerable and I am, it is a superpower, but it's also a very precious gift, and people have to earn that. People have to be willing to like also disrobe these layers that we've been conditioned to put on. And I think the most important thing is recognizing that your sanity as a queer, marginalized, Black, brown, Asian person, the sacredness of your life experience absolutely must come first. And then the other thing is being able to, that is also part of the change, right? To live so boldly and open in all of who you are. Easier said than done. There's a lot of real reasons to be afraid. Yeah, there's a lot of real reasons to be afraid, which is why I think the sober spaces we have are so special. And so beautiful. Like, I wouldn't be here, the drag queen that I am, if it wasn't for all the other, queens in Texas who took me under their wing and shadily read me for filth and taught me all about who I am and where I come from and that I'm not alone. And I think, yeah, I definitely, I would hope that more people would want to realize that part of being an ally is that you don't just turn it on and turn it off when it's convenient for you. It's absolutely inconvenient to be an ally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I had a question, Fonda.
Yes.
How do I know if what I'm experiencing qualifies or would be body dysmorphic disorder or an eating disorder? How do I ask? What are some questions I can ask myself to say, is this something that I'm experiencing? Is this something that I should go seek help for? And then if the answers to my questions wind up being yes, where can I go and find some help?
By the way, that's our DJ Spenderella, DJ Wasabi Nuts. Thank you, Sven.
Yes, the mysterious man with the voice. So those are great questions, and what I would say is a couple of things. One is, if you're asking those questions, you are worthy of validating that for yourself. Like, first and foremost, I always tell people, you don't have to hit rock bottom to want something better for yourself. If you are recognizing to any capacity that you are struggling with how you see yourself, um, or how you are engaging in a relationship with yourself and with your body, um, always you're worthy of help and change. And I do believe it's possible. The other thing is like, same with food. You know, we don't rarely have I met an alcoholic or an addict who gets sober and puts down the substances and then poof, it's perfect. That wasn't me. I became a hooker and a whore and like struggle with food and shopping and like, it's a process, you know. It is such a process. And this idea, I'll point something else out there, this idea that like body dysmorphia or body image is reserved for people who struggle with larger experiences, being stigmatized, that's the struggle, being stigmatized first and foremost, and the discrimination that our entire world has against fat bodies. Like, fat bodies aren't allowed to have joy, fat bodies aren't allowed to eat, fat bodies aren't allowed to move, fat bodies aren't allowed to feel sexy or confident or be represented. You go to the doctor in this country, the first thing they tell you if you're a fat body person is all of your problems stem from being fat. The idea that a fat body can be a healthy body, but then we look at thinness as like some kind of health gold standard. We look at fitness, when that person probably could have more shame and have more of a debilitating experience with their body and food than anyone else. You can't judge. And so that's why I say, like, it does not matter. What matters most is that you feel comfortable and loved enough to honor your experience and your struggle,
Mm-hmm.
and to find a community of people that will understand. And, I found more recovery when I was sitting in a room with people who were literally asking the same question as me. None of us had the answer, but it's like, oh shit, I'm not alone with this question, and I think that's so powerful. And so, I'm not a therapist, so I don't want to say like, this is what an eating disorder is. What I can tell you from my experience and what I've experienced with other people is, if your body and how you perceive your body is removing you from relationships, from feeling like somehow your body or how your body moves or looks determines your worth or your value. If you are struggling with food in a way that you are not experiencing joy, or you feel like that it is somehow taking up too much space in your life, like the obsession, like, absolutely. So it doesn't matter at that point if it's eating disorder or disordered eating. You are worthy of an experience in your life that brings you joy. And unfortunately, I just want to validate, there's so much insanity around food. I mean, I can't tell you how many diets have come and gone in my entire 14 years of trying to find eating disorders. Now cauliflower is turned into everything, and I just think it's insane. Oftentimes I'm the one who had a life-threatening eating disorder for 10 plus years, and I sit down at like a gathering with the gaggle of gays, and I'm the only one not talking about the gym or swimsuit, whatever, or it's literally been so normalized and integrated into the fabric of how we communicate with each other. It's like, try to compliment someone without complimenting their body. Get on social media and see how much of it is not centered around body. We are reinforced in that narrative every day. So I think the most important thing to honor is that you're asking the question, and it's not an easy answer. Like, I'm giving you a very long answer because the reality is, this is a big deal. So many people struggle, 33 million Americans have an eating disorder in this country every year. Like that's the average. That's a lot of people. And that's people who have the privilege of getting a diagnosis. There's so many that aren't diagnosed. There's so much in our gay community and our queer community that is normalized, that it's, you know, the language is different. And the resources that are out there, I will plug one. There's the Alliance. It is a free clinician-led peer, you know, the Alliance for Eating Disorders. They have an LGBTQ focus group every Wednesday. The clinicians are queer themselves. And just listen. I would say just go in and listen and listen for the similarities to know that you're not alone. There's also through Eating Recovery, where I work, we have an LGBTQ support group that's free. So, and there's so many, like Project Heal is another one. Project Heal is committed to equity and eating disorder care. They offer a ton of scholarships. So there's a lot of resources out there. There's more now. There should be more than what I'm telling you. And I think we're working towards that.
How could somebody be a support to people who are dealing with body dysmorphia or eating disorder, or what are some good ways to support someone? Or not? What are the don'ts?
The don'ts, okay, I can tell you. The don'ts are don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, my favorite is the 4 C's. You know, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it, and you have choices. You know, you can, well, 5 C's. You can contribute. And so I think the most important thing is asking people, you know, ask them, what do you need from me? How can I help you? You know, I want to help you. I love you. I think that's the most important thing. Being able to recognize your own limitations. You know, this is, you know, body dysmorphia and eating disorders are a very serious mental illness. And so always advocating for someone to get the care that they need, recognize, you know, I would, even as someone who's had an eating disorder, I would not try to tackle someone else's. I've learned to help someone find the care that they need because I know what it's like. And I think the most important thing is like the oxygen mask. You know, you get on the airplane and they're like, you have to put yours on first before you can help anyone else. I mean, that is so true. Like making sure that you are taking care of yourself so you can show up in a very loving and kind way. And I think, you know, so many people will be like, I'll give you an example, you know, I'm so fat, I hate myself. And your automatic response is like, you're not fat. That is not what you do. Instead, you can be like, wow, I can see that you're really struggling with this. And I can only imagine how hard it is. And I just want you to know that you're not alone. You know, I'm sitting here with you. And what does it feel like? You know, get curious, ask them, you know, what does that feel like? Validation. Brene Brown has a really great short little cartoon video about the difference between sympathy and empathy, which I think is such a powerful tool for anyone who has, you know, a friend that is struggling with an eating disorder or addiction. You know, we are each other's community, and you know, that's a beautiful thing. And then the other thing is you do watch the people that you love struggle. We do. You know, you show up for recovery, you're going to see recovery. It's not always pretty. And so I think being able to recognize your own limitations and not put that kind of pressure on yourself to be able to fix it is really important.
Yeah. How does drag, I want to know a little bit about how drag plays into your recovery.
Oh my God, it's everything. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. My drag character is kind of like the superhero that I always needed. That's always been in me, you know, and I learned more and more about it. It's all the parts of myself that I thought made me unacceptable and undeserving in the world. It's my queerness. It's, you know, and so much is based on facing fears. Like the first one is like putting on the wig and walking out the door. Like I love how RuPaul, she's got her problems, but you know, she says anyone who walks out of the house and heals is my hero. I hope that's true. It's true for me. Thank you, RuPaul, for that quote, because I, you know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for RuPaul, who paved the way, you know, and all the beautiful queens and my ancestors who came before me, who showed me that like we're here. And my drag is about celebrating that and celebrating that in other people and having fun with all of it's taking all of the darkness and turning it into something beautiful that the people who want to, it's the people who want to come together and celebrate that in each other, you know, show up. It's like everybody has an invitation. You just have to know how to read it and come and be yourself. I think so much about drag is about letting go of the rules, I hope, and just like realizing like who is that person inside and who is that person inside you and how do you feel like expressing it today, you know, and it's different for everybody. And that's why I love it so much. I cannot imagine my life without drag, and I needed sobriety to really learn to love that non-binary queer person underneath the makeup. You know, in the beginning, it was about survival and desperation, and with sobriety and finding my tribe, it's become this really fun, carefree way to celebrate. You know, it's a really fun party.
Yes.
I think this is a great place to wrap up. You have been a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for just really kind of educating
The
wee little
children.
us over here.
No, I sometimes feel like I talk too much. So I really appreciate you asking me questions and letting me share and inviting me on the show. This is really an awesome thing that you have created, and I can't wait to see it continue to blossom and spread more fun and joy in the world with other people. So thank you so much.
You're our first guest ever, so
Absolutely.
you're our first virgin. I don't know how do we say that? You're our first one.
I'm honored. I popped the cherry. I've never done that.
Yeah, it's like when we're canceled, you'll be our last guest.
Oh God, you know my favorite saying is if you stay canceled, you don't have to get canceled.
Right.
Exactly. We are staying canceled.
Fonda, did you
Goodness.
promote anything anywhere we can find you?
Yeah. So you can catch me on Instagram at FKDrag. And I do have a show all about queer mental health and eating disorders, Queen and Sober. It's an Instagram live once a month. It's usually the last Wednesday of every month on Eating Recovery Center's page at 5 Pacific time. Tomorrow I'm joined with Edson Montenegro. They are a non-binary comedian in New York who is also in eating disorder recovery and also sober. So it'll be a fun little kiki. And yeah, I look forward to interacting with all of you. And then this is the free eating disorder support group offered through Eating Recovery Center for anyone who is queer and fabulous and just needing a little extra support. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we want to remind you all that the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gathering space for all people and a home for queer recovery community. We endeavor to be a space where all seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy. And don't forget to subscribe and like and share as much as you can. Oh, wait. I was moving a little too fast. We have some other things.
Right. Tune in every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Search for Castro Country Club or at the CCC. Want to do the next one?
Oh, and leave a voicemail message for us on SpeakPipe at our link below.
And we just might showcase it. Should we say our guest or say our topic next week?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So we really are going to talk about mental health next week. And our guest is going to be
Zachary D. You heard his
there.
excuse me. See, correct me.
Yeah,
You heard
we're
there.
learning.
Yes, exactly. Message at the beginning, and really, we're looking to you to kind of help shape the conversations that we have. So let us know what you want to hear about.
Yep. You can email us at podcast@castrocountryclub.org. Find us wherever you find podcasts at the CCC. And as Lulu said,
and again, my favorite line: like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow, and most important, listen.
Listen.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye, Vonda.
Ta-ta. Now we just kind of act like we're saying stuff,